I feel like I'm giving off that Michelle Pfeiffer and Grease 2 vibe here. What do you think? You guys, I spent so much time on this eye look today, and my eyes are watering like a sprinkler. It is so ridiculous. It's just, ugh. But anyways, hey you guys, it's me, Ashley, and today I'm going to tell you guys my Halloween horror story, which actually has nothing to do with Halloween. But it is a horror story, so we're going to just call it that, okay? I'm going to be telling you guys the story about how my crazy coworker tried to fight me. So if you guys want to see that, then just keep watching. That highlight though. So, let me tell you guys a story. Okay. Let's name this person Maleficent. No, I like Maleficent. Let's name her something else. Like, we're gonna name her Basic Brittany. Okay? Her name is not Brittany. I never worked with anyone with the name of Brittany, so at this job that I worked at, we had 2 levels, okay, and I was a server, right? So the upper level, I mean, it's not technically reserved for like party tables, which would be like groups of 10 or more, but it's like the unspoken thing that you put all of the big tables upstairs as long as they can fit, okay? And there's usually 2 servers upstairs at this place, okay? So they would have like 9 or 10 downstairs, 2 upstairs, and it was always the same 2. Like there were 3 of us and it would just rotate out, but I was upstairs no matter what every weekend, okay? And then I would either work with this guy or this other girl, and I love both of them to death. So one weekend the guy had requested off and the girl was closing, so she was downstairs by default. When you're a closer, you have a specific section at this place, so that's how it was, okay? Well, you know, I walk in and I'm being told, you know, Brittany, Basic Brittany, asked if she could work upstairs, so I'm just gonna let her. She wants you to teach her, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I'm like, okay, you know, I'd never had a problem with this girl. I really never worked with her too often, so, I mean, there was no issue, you know. Okay, so I don't like working in a mess, and I was a little bit of a neat freak when I worked upstairs at this job, okay? So this is like a giant Red Bull, and I can't get through the day without it. So anyway, I like to keep things organized at work, and at this particular place, when I worked upstairs, we really didn't have much of a area. You know, we had like a little drink fountain, and we had a little bit of a counter space, and you know, we had a couple of shelves that we kept our stocks and stuff on. So we just didn't have a lot of space. Now when you're serving 12 to 40 people at a time, you know, you need that space to set your drinks down, to make drinks, to put your pitchers for tea, whatever. You know, if you're a server, you understand. You kind of need order. It's, you know, and then on top of that, it makes it a lot easier at the end of the night to just kind of clean up, because there's not this massive mess that you have to clean up. Whatever. Okay, so she was really, what's the word, like, I don't want to say unorganized, chaotic. That's my word, chaotic. Okay, so she was like not used to serving these big groups, or at least that's the vibe I got from her, because she's kind of running around, you know, just whatever. I asked her, you know, a couple of times. She would leave like all these drinks with ice in the drink, and they'd be full. There'd be like 6 or 7 of them on the counter, just kind of spread out on this little tiny like 3x2 counter space that we had, okay? And our trays are like this big. So I mean, imagine every time, you know, you're in a rush and you're trying to do something, you're having to move all these cups that were like spread out across the entire counter just so you could lay your tray down, just so you could fill drinks for your own table. Anyway, so she would leave all these cups, you know, full of drinks, and I just didn't understand, you know, what are we doing here? Why do we have 12 cups full of beverage, you know, are they mistakes, whatever. So I would just say, hey, do you need these things, you know? And she would tell me yes or no, and if she said yes, I would just kind of push them to the side. If she said no, I would dump them out, right? Now, granted, she's an adult with a child, okay? Just keep that in mind. So this happened like 6 or 7 times where she would have all these cups out, and I'd be in a rush, and she'd walk back there and not even attempt to like move them or anything. So I would just say, hey, do you need these things? Like, hey, is this something you needing? You know, and if she would tell me yes, I would move it to the side. If she'd tell me no, I would just pour it out or throw it away or do whatever, you know, I needed to do. She would leave like cups spilled over on trays, you know, and the drink, the ice, everything would be all in the tray. It'd be like this deep in Sprite, for instance. That was one of the ones she did, or tea or whatever. And she'd just leave it there. And then she'd be standing there texting on her phone with like this huge mess. So I'd be like, you know, I just poured it out. And I told her eventually, you know, after, well, slow down, Ashley. After like the 5th or 6th time, I said, hey, do you need these things? And she would say yes or no, whatever, you know. I asked her, I'm like, you know, what is all this? So, you know, are these your drinks? Because, like, for herself, like, personal drinks, are these your drinks? And she told me, no, they were backup refills in case someone at one of her tables needed a refill. Now, could you imagine being at a restaurant, eating your food, being like, hey, can I get a refill Coke? And she brings you a Coke that has, like, a layer of melted ice on top, where it's, like, Coke at the bottom, water, and then of course once you start drinking it, it's going to mix together, and now you have a watered down Coke that you just got within like 2 minutes because it'd been sitting in the back for 10-15 minutes just waiting on someone to need it. I mean, our ice bin at this place was like right below the drink fountain, right? So it's like scoop, pour, like it would take you what, 30 seconds at most, and instead you just have all these backup watered down drinks, whatever. So after like the 9th or 10th time, I'm like, I had a 15 top and a 9 top that needed drinks, okay, because it was a Saturday night. We were busy, right? And I asked her, I'm like, hey, do you need these things? You know, and I'm getting frustrated at this point because I'm tired of cleaning up after this little girl. She wasn't a little girl, but she was, right? So I'm like, hey, Basic Brittany, do you need these things? You know, I was so polite to her, even through my frustration. And she's like, why do you keep asking me that? Because I need those for when I need a refill. And I was like, well, it's just kind of overwhelming when I'm running around like a crazy person, busy, and I have to clean up all of this stuff. You know, we have an area, a little table to the wall behind the drink area wall, like it's like a hallway, and on one side's the drink area, on the other side it's just a wall. We have like a table where we put our dishes when we clean off the table, or when we would, you know, get finished, we would put our dishes, dirty dishes, whatever, on this table. So I'm like, you know, if you don't need them, can you just keep them on the dirty dish table? You know, it's overwhelming when I'm in a rush and I have to come back here and clean all this stuff up because it's all scattered everywhere, and I don't have time for that. And she looks at me. Now, granted, I only knew her from this job. She wasn't my friend. She wasn't someone that I was even friends with at work. We weren't like, we didn't argue or anything, but we just didn't talk. It was just, she was just like a coworker, you know, if whatever. I just wasn't cool with her. I wasn't not cool with her, but I wasn't cool with her either. So she says,
have you ever thought about going to the doctor and getting put on Xanax?
And I was like, for what? And she said,
because you get overwhelmed about drinks.
And I was like, no, I get overwhelmed when I clean up after you 15 times and I'm trying to do stuff for all my tables and it's busy and there's a mess everywhere. That's when I get overwhelmed. And I was like, you know, that just kind of, it made it super salty after that, you know, because you just don't say things like that to people, especially people you don't know. After that, like I said, it was just kind of weird, you know, the vibe was just really different. She only had one table, granted it was 8 people, you know, but she wasn't able, you know, it was her turn to take this 12 top of people. And I told her, you know, I'm like, hey, it's your turn, just so you know, right as the table was sitting, you know, because I'm the kind of person that I don't want anything that happens to reflect on me. So I didn't want these people sitting here. I wasn't sure if she realized it was her turn. So I go and I'm like, hey, it's your turn. There's 12 out there, you know, that's a gratuity table. So I didn't want to be like, I'm trying to steal this gratuity table from this girl. So I went and told her, you know, hey, it's your turn, right? Plus it was towards the end of the night. I was already frustrated and I was just ready to kind of like start winding down. Plus it was her turn. So she's like,
Yeah, I got it, no big deal.
okay. About 15 minutes goes by and this table still doesn't have napkins or straws, which was our sign of greeting, you know, that's how other people knew that you had greeted the table. So I asked her, I'm like, hey, you know, have you been able to get to that table? Do you need me to do anything? And I'm trying to still keep the peace, right? And she's like,
oh yeah, I'm good, I got it.
okay, you know, so I'm going about my business, taking care of my own tables. About 10 more minutes goes by and these people still don't have drinks. So I go up to them and I was like, hey, have y'all been helped yet? It's super busy. I just want to make sure, do y'all need anything? And they seemed really cool. You know, they're like, yeah, she came and got our drink order. We're just waiting. Whatever. They were young, probably like 17, 18, maybe 20. But they were young. They were really cool. No big deal. So I'm like, okay. And I go about my day. Probably like 10 or so minutes goes by and they still don't have drinks on the table. So I go downstairs and I tell one of the girls who was not technically a manager, but she was like a key, you know. She could do certain manager functions. We usually had a manager plus a key on the weekend. So I go to her because our manager was busy and I'm like, hey, we're already kind of having, you know, some sour vibes. So I don't want her to feel like I'm trying to tell her what to do or I'm stepping on her toes. So could you please, this table's been sitting here for almost 30 minutes, if not more than that, waiting. They don't have drinks yet. I just don't want her to feel like I am being overbearing to her, you know, because I didn't want to say,
Hey, are you gonna get them? You know, they've been sitting here all day.
I didn't want to do that because there was already those salty vibes. So she's like, yeah, I got it. You know, she comes upstairs and she goes to the table and she starts talking to them and she gets their drink order again. And she comes to me and she's like, Ashley, can you please just get these drinks? I don't know where she is. Brittany still had a table sitting there waiting on their checks. So I was like, okay, you know, do I need to take this table? And she's like, yeah, if you don't mind. And I was like, you know, that's really trifling because they've been sitting there for over 30 minutes at this point. They still don't have drinks and I'm gonna have to deal with that, right? Like they're gonna be upset. I'm gonna have to deal with that. But I took them, you know, it's a gratuity anyway because it was enough to make a gratuity table. So if I could just give them a good experience, they wouldn't dispute the gratuity because of how long they waited, you know, so that's what I was just going with. So I go and I get all their drinks to them and I start taking their order and, you know, everything's going smoothly. I see basic Brittany in passing. She's trying to get this other table's checks, who they'd been waiting for their checks for like 30 minutes, which was the reason why she couldn't get to the other table. Anyway. So I'm going downstairs, checking on the food, you know, trying to see if anything was ready, if I needed to do anything, just trying to do my basic job, right? And as I'm going into the hallway, like our kitchen's here, and then there's like this little foyer and then the staircase back behind it. So as I'm going into the foyer, basic Brittany is standing here talking to the key. And I hit like the first 2 stairs and I hear her say,
and she called me a messy bitch.
I didn't call her that. I didn't even call her messy. All I said was, I don't like working in a mess, right? So I turn around, I'm like, hey, you know, if you're going to tell any kind of story, please don't lie. She's like,
you more or less called me messy bitch.
And I was like, no, I didn't. I didn't even call her that when I was venting to people that I'm cool with at work. Like, I didn't even call her messy, nor did I call her a bitch when I was talking to anybody. So the fact that she said that I called her a messy bitch, I didn't even call her messy. So I'm like, I didn't say that. I didn't more or less say that. I did nothing along those lines came out of my mouth. I didn't call you anything. All I said was, I don't want to work in a mess. I don't like working in a mess. And I was like, and the only reason I even told you that I don't like working in a mess is because you told me I needed Xanax, which I don't. At this point, I'm heated where she's standing like a few, like 6 feet from me, and I'm standing in the foyer part of the staircase, and she is like, that's what it's called, right? Or a landing, whatever. Anyway, bottom of the stairs, 6 feet from each other. And I was like, you know, you don't know me. We're not friends. You don't say stuff like that joking to people that you don't know, because you just don't know how that would affect someone. All I was thinking was it was rude. It was disrespectful. Don't tell me I need Xanax. Just clean up after yourself. She started yelling at me, and I was just like standing there like, the only reason I told you that I don't want to work in a mess is because I've cleaned up after you at least 10 times. I have been picking up your drinks. Nobody wants watered down drinks. I'm cleaning up after you like you are my child. I was like, and you have a child. You know, I mean, clean up after yourself. It's not that difficult. You know, and I have not had an issue with anybody else. All of us, most all of us, you know, clean up after ourselves. I mean, I understand getting in a rush. You set one cup here, you know, but then when you get a breather, you go and get that cup and you put it out, right? Not every time you walk into an area leaving a mess, like clutter, trash, dirty dishes, spilled Sprites. You know, you don't do that. We are adults, right? And when I said, you are not a child, she whips off her head. She's like, yes, I self-censored myself. And her hat gets stuck in her braid, okay? And she's like yanking on it, and I'm just sitting there like, and I just started laughing. She like ran at me, and her hat stuck in her hair. She's like, and I'm just like, oh. You know, like I'm just like, oh my God. And then I said, and I need Xanax, right? Like, you're telling me to get Xanax? Are you serious? So after that, our manager comes over. He sees what's going on. He's like,
basically, Brittany, I'm going to need you to settle down, stop screaming. You know, people can hear you out there. Just go take care of your tables and go away.
He didn't tell her to go away. He just said, y'all go take care of your tables, get your job done. At this point, it was time for us to be closing anyway, you know, so it was just really crazy. She ended up going into the office and crying for 45 minutes about how she didn't want to pay tip share to the busser because we have to take our own dishes down the stairs. I mean, that's how it was always. The bussers clean off the rest of the table, but we have to pre-bus. You know, that's any job you work at in the restaurant industry. If you pre-bus your area, you get a busser that is trying to keep up, but on a busy Friday and Saturday night, they can't do everything. You get one busser. I mean, it's not difficult. If you want money, you bus your tables. Hello. So yeah, I just did all my stuff, cashed out, and I left. And apparently after that, she had a couple of like no call, no shows, and then she no longer worked there after that. So yeah, that is my Halloween horror story. But if you enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up. If you thought it was funny, give me a big thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel with the notifications on so you don't miss anything from me in the future. And follow me on all my social media. Will be all linked down below. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.